You are listening to the Slow Living Podcast, and I'm your host, Stephanie O'Day. What if I told you that you could truly have the life of your dreams, the life you've always wanted, one filled with abundance, joy, and a sense of purpose? It's absolutely possible, and I see it each and every day with my coaching clients. It all starts with learning how to slow down. You deserve to live the life you've always dreamt about. Let's get started. So if you're a fan of the podcast, you're going to absolutely love the book. Slow Living, Cultivating a Life of Purpose in a Hustle-Driven World is now available wherever books are sold. Buy it for yourself, your children, your friends, and your neighbors. You can get all the juicy details at stephanieoday.com/slow living book. Trust me, this is hands down the best $20 you'll ever spend. Hi there, Slow Down Society. Steph here, and we're on episode 161 of the Slow Living Podcast. And we have an interview today with Charity. I'm so happy to have her. She's got a new book, and Charity Gibson is a wife, mom of 4, and an English professor at the College of the Ozarks, where she has taught for over a decade. With a PhD in literature and criticism, she's an avid story lover and lifelong educator. Charity's faith is an important foundation in her life, inspiring her passion for family, community, and purpose-driven living. Her newest book, The Working Homemaker, is a guide for mothers balancing work and home life, offering practical advice on creating healthy family rhythms, embracing simplicity, and prioritizing meaningful time with loved ones. Stuff we are all about here on the Slow Living Podcast. So Charity, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, I am so excited to be here on your show, Stephanie. I enjoy listening to all of your interviews, and now here I am on the podcast. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And then we chatted through email that the only thing I know about the Ozarks is from the show Ozark. Um, and so you assured me you're not drug smuggling in any way.
I'm not. No, I've actually not watched the show because I knew enough of what it was about that I just thought, I would probably just get angry watching it. Like, no, we're not all like that, but I know it's a great storyline and a lot of people do love it.
It's very not family friendly. It's a nighttime show, and it's interesting. I was talking to some friends of mine when I said that I was going to be interviewing you, and it's a dark show. One, in the content, but two, it takes place at night a lot, and so the whole time I'm like wanting them to turn the lights on, and so just even the cinematography is kind of dark. I enjoyed it. It's similar to Breaking Bad in that it's weird in that you're rooting for bad guys. And so like you never really like, do we like this guy? Am I supposed to want him to win even though he's a bad guy?
Right, kind of the anti-hero storyline going on.
Absolutely. So tell me about your book. What drove you to write this book?
Yeah. So I think the idea of homemaking has just really been at the forefront of what I knew I wanted to be about as I was even thinking about becoming a mom and then, having my children. But I was also aware that the typical kind of way that people think about being a homemaker was a mold I didn't fully fit into because I'm a working mom and I have been all throughout my motherhood journey. So this idea that a homemaker is someone who is home full time, not partaking in paid employment in any way, um, was really kind of a pain point for me because it was something that I had such a heart for. And so really it's just been walking through this idea of thinking about homemaking as something that actually unites us as women, whether we are full-time at home, whether we are also out in the workforce, that we can have these shared values and priorities of resisting some of the busyness and hustle culture and putting our family and raising our children and focusing on their well-being as something that makes us homemakers rather than having it be about job status.
Do you have your own definition of homemaker?
I do, and it's something that I think, people can probably fill in the gaps and see what makes sense for them. But for me, I think we need to redefine homemaking as nurturing relationships and cultivating a lifestyle for family flourishing.
Okay. Okay. So in your book, you talked a little bit about the mommy wars, and you
Hmm.
were saying that from your point of view, they've been debunked online, yet there still seems to be quite a bit of a divide, or at least it feels that way. So even if they're dying or debunked in some way, how do you get over that feeling of it's an us versus them type feeling?
Yeah. So, for those that might not be familiar with that term, mommy wars, I feel especially maybe the generation ahead of me, and I've talked to women that kind of agreed with this, that the mommy wars was kind of pitting stay-at-home moms and working moms against each other, sort of like one is the correct approach and choose your camp. And though I mean, I've still seen a bit of that online, um, it does seem overall that women realize that that was self-defeating. But when I was thinking about the genre that I was writing in, and I don't consider it a self-help book necessarily, but some might put it in that genre. And what I've noticed is that books about homemaking do tend to be in the genre of women who stay at home. And then books for working moms tend to be about kind of how to keep all of the plates spinning and how to be productive and so on and so forth. And so in that way, it seemed that there were still sort of these divides arbitrarily set up in the literature of either you have these values about home or you have values about how to be successful um, beyond the home.
Okay. Okay. So you talk about valuing homemaking and that it's not just for full-time stay-at-home moms. And then you had spoken about sometimes the books that you had seen in the past divvy the two up. And so within this book, you've married the two. And it's interesting because I agree with you, but I also live in Silicon Valley, and so sometimes it seems that if you do value that or speak about that or put kind of the nurturing role first, sometimes some people view it as sort of anti modernization or anti feminist in some way. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it kind of does come back to thinking about feminism and the feminist movement. And there's actually been four waves of that, four waves of the feminist movement. And the earliest wave really focused on women's rights, the right to vote, the right to higher education, so on and so forth. And then in the second wave, you started to see with people like Betty Friedan and others, kind of this idea that because women were not really allowed to be anywhere other than in domesticity, that that is where they ought to be. And of course, she used that term, the feminine mystique, for and the problem that has no name, basically women that were not fulfilled, and it's because they didn't have something outside of the home. Um, and though in some ways, I mean, that was helpful that women were being encouraged to pursue other interests if they had them. Third wave feminism, I think, has begun to show that that is still a box that women are being put in if they're being told you must pursue these things because your foremothers were not allowed to. Then it's still kind of saying, okay, then this is where you belong and this is where you don't belong. And so, though I would say, there could still be those that are making that argument. It does seem that we are getting perhaps to a place where the element of choice is being valued. That for some women, that choice is going to be staying home full time. And for other women, that choice is going to be working as well. And so I think anytime that I hear someone saying, well, this is, not carrying the torch for other women or whatever the case might be, there's probably an overlooking of that element of choice, which originally I think was a huge part of the movement.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the word fulfillment is different for every person. So some people can be completely and totally fulfilled by perfecting a sourdough starter and all of these things. And some people don't feel fulfilled unless they're intellectually stimulated and on the cusp at all times. Um, do you feel fulfilled by like quote unquote chores, or is that not fit? Like if it's a different definition for anyone and it is their choice, it's fascinating how some people immediately kind of dismiss others ideas of fulfillment.
Right. Yeah, so I'm a little embarrassed to admit this to you, Stephanie, because I know that you have so many great tips on housekeeping and being in the kitchen and all of that. And I have found that my personal interests and talents, I wouldn't say center on housekeeping. Maybe it's because I'm an academic that I really like to be inside my head, and and that is a place that I struggle, but I certainly do believe that part of homemaking is learning how to cultivate ourselves. And sometimes for me, it's humbling myself to that work, which is really meaningful, even though I might not say I don't like cooking and cleaning for the sake of it, but I see how it is honoring and supportive to my family. And then on the flip side, at work, there's a lot of administrative tasks and tedious sometimes parts of, let's say, grading 40 research papers that maybe, isn't the reason that I became a teacher. But I see how that's so important in order to help my students grow as writers and move to the big picture ideas that we want to explore. So I would say no matter what it is that we would say, this is my area, this is the thing I'm really passionate about, there's probably still going to be those elements that we have to say, okay, this comes with the territory. I can I can commit to the process here and maybe see its value, even if I'm never going to love it.
Yeah, I do agree with you, and it's interesting. While I value having the house tidy and cooking and things like that, it does feel like a chore. You had mentioned that a friend uh, gets joy out of chopping vegetables and sautéing them.
Hmm.
Um, I actually don't usually. I mean, sometimes if I'm all alone and 80s music is blaring and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in the zone, and then it's fun. But otherwise, cooking for people does feel like a chore, which is essentially why I like the crock pot so much, because it does it for me. Uh so I definitely see both sides. I wish sometimes I had a little bit more of like the homesteady roots and did feel joy in simple kind of repetitive mundane tasks like folding laundry and things like that. And so in order for me to marry the two, I'll binge watch a trashy TV show. So then it's like both parts of me are getting fulfilled.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah. You tell a story in your book about a family photo gone awry because at the time you were so focused on the aesthetics of your children and your husband that you actually neglected yourself.
Yes. So that's a story when it happened. I never would have imagined I would share it with anyone, but here we are. So basically, I like to have that annual milestone picture that this is my kids when they were 2 and then 3 and then 4, and then throw in some family pictures as well. And yeah, I was just we just had my 2 girls at the time, but trying to get them fed and dressed up and all of the things for pictures, matching outfits. And we went to the studio, we took the pictures, and I got a free 8 by 10. It was some special. And so I chose a family picture. And then when I got it back, I noticed that there was something on my teeth. I thought that must just be, the paper quality or a little speck of something, and tried to scratch it off and wouldn't come off. Looked on the online files and noticed, lo and behold, I had worked so hard on trying to do everything for the family and make sure that we had this presentable persona for pictures that, yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about myself in the process, and to even look in the mirror and make sure that everything that I was doing for them, that I wasn't forgetting about myself in the process. And that picture has never been framed, but the girls' pictures were great. But it did kind of remind me in retrospect that despite the valuable enterprise that it is to focus on homemaking and our family and the kids, that it's a lot, while also working. And even for those that aren't working, it's a lot. And if we don't pause and take that time to kind of check in and say, how am I doing? Is this working, or am I just pursuing this goal at all costs?
Hmm.
That sometimes there's a price to pay, and sometimes that's our own well-being, or maybe health or happiness. And personally, I would say it's not really working if that's the
Mm,
case. If mom has to become a martyr for this lifestyle to happen, then it's not really in the family's best interest.
yeah. So your kids are still pretty young. There's 5, 7, 9, and 11. So right now, what does your daily schedule and routine look like?
Yeah, so our daily schedule is that we all leave in the morning together to go to our respective places. The three girls are at school together. My son is at daycare. I'm at work. But then at the end of all of that, we do return home together. And for the most part, that's where we are for the rest of the evening. And I will say, we've just finished up volleyball season, and there were nights where two girls had to go somewhere, and my husband would help with those logistics as well. But we do really try to be purposeful in the sorts of extracurriculars that we do and make sure that they are for um, limited amounts of time. So, okay, we know we have this 2.5 month season. And we're going to then give ourselves a break before we would commit to anything else. And in the same way, trying to manage that where the younger kids don't necessarily have to be out and a part of that commitment, that there's a way that we can sort of let the older girls start experiencing some of these things beyond the home, but not have it impact the younger kids, as I still think it's really important for them to have that time at home to unwind, to be
Hmm.
with each other, to be with me. So, yeah.
If you're all leaving the house at the same time, do you wake up first and take care of yourself first? Do the kids get up on their own, or are you still waking them up?
So I do get up first, yes. And we have opted for a wake up time for the kids where they're only allowed to get up so early. And I'll be honest, I don't know how people parented before those clocks with the light on it, right? Green means you can get up,
Yeah,
red,
my
stay in bed.
brother has that for his children. It's fascinating. Yeah. It's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
It is. It just gives them that cue of, okay, you can be awake, but you still need to rest. And so we do sort of have that set time for everybody to get up. I try to have taken care of a lot of those things that make it maybe hectic, like, okay, what needs to be packed in the van already? Do I have a plan for breakfast? And all those little things I think do help make it run smoother.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say mornings are, as perhaps bump free as I would like for them to be. You just can't anticipate who got a good night of rest. Whose clothes are going to feel a little bit itchy this morning, or
Hmm.
something like that. But I do think trying to be proactive in having, having the outfit set out the night before, which we do, and having the backpacks packed the night before does make it smoother than it could otherwise be.
Hmm. And then in the evenings, I know you had spoken about the volleyball practice. Um, right now, are you all eating dinner together at the same time?
Yeah, we do. So, and then some of this, I suppose, is beyond our control of when exactly the practices happen.
Hmm.
But if they go a little bit late, then we'll wait and have dinner until everyone is finished. If we've ever got something happening later in the night, trying to do a bit of an earlier dinner. Since it's the only meal that we're able to eat together,
Hmm.
breakfast is usually en route in the morning, lunches at school for the kids. That for me, I do find that it is just kind of a way. I mean, I think a lot of us realize that food is communal, that food brings people together. And so, kind of allocating that time to be together, to be sharing a meal, is something that we've really tried to prioritize over the years.
Do you think with the ages and stages of your kids as they get into the middle school and high school years, they'll each have their own sport, and so there will probably need to be some shifting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that things, even looking now, the way that we do life versus how we did it when we just had one baby or when we had a
Hmm.
couple, there was a stage where I actually taught some night classes or taught late afternoon into the early evening classes. And, at that stage, things did look a little bit different. And then they shifted
Yeah.
as more children came along, and that didn't really work anymore. And so I have tried to be thinking already, okay, this is working for us now, but what's the difference in sort of embracing something versus saying, okay, we have to be tied or married to this routine for the sake of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm certain that as they move into the teen years, that some of that will have to change. And I'm
Hmm.
hopeful the foundation of trying to prioritize togetherness will still make that something that we're valuing, even as we don't want to legalistically say, oh no, if there's 1 or 2 nights a week that we can't be together, we must somehow not be doing it right.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true. There needs to be an extreme amount of flexibility as interests and school schedules and different things ebb and flow. When you talk about the calendaring and your husband helping and things like that, there's a lot of talk about decision fatigue and the mental load and how it affects women more so than men. Do you find that as of right now, you are the creator of the schedules and the grocery list and the laundry cycle and things like that?
For the most part, I am the one that sort of organizes our schedule. My husband keeps telling me that I need to, move into the 21st century and do an online calendar or something like that. And I know those apps are out there. I'm just very old school, and I have a calendar just like my mom did that hangs on the refrigerator, and I write things in pencil and adjust it as needed. But that is something I think that just really goes beyond mom and dad roles. And even, that's my personality. I have a very similar calendar in my office for things going on at work. And so, though I would say in certain ways we do gravitate toward what we might say would be like the typical mom jobs and dad jobs. There are certainly times where my husband is cooking dinner if I've got something going on at work or whatever the case might be. And so I would say we gravitate toward that kind of more based on our skills or interests rather than saying, okay, I have to be the one doing this because I'm the mom.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's something to pay attention to. And I talk to my own parents and in-laws. And what's nice is the languaging has shifted that if Adam is doing something with the kids, He's not like quote unquote helping. This is just what parents do. Parents parent, and regardless of who is home, if the children are hungry, feed the children. You don't need to ask me what's for dinner. I don't know. Open the fridge and figure it out. So I like in that way that the shift has definitely occurred within our household, and I can see it in the surrounding households that anyone who's home is fully capable of figuring out what's for dinner and cooking. And it's nice now because my older one was home yesterday and we were in a soccer tournament, and so she just happened to be home, so she cooked us all dinner because she knew we'd be hungry when we walked in the door, and it was like, oh, thank you. so
Wow.
so appreciated.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, we are not there yet, but that is my hope someday that, yes, certainly the kids will also be able to pitch in those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So with your book, you also, I had touched upon extended family, but in your book, you talk about the importance of accepting and getting along with extended family and in laws. So we're gearing up for the holiday season, and a lot of times, some really kind of touchy subjects and conversations happen around the holiday table with family. How do you navigate those situations?
Yeah. Well, that is a chapter in my book that sort of surprised me as I was writing it. Like, okay, I'm writing about homemaking, and now I'm thinking about extended family. What's the connection here? But the way I was thinking about it is that we have, this span of 18 or so years with our children until they're probably thinking about their next step. But of course, we all want a lifetime relationship with our children. And so, thinking about the years that they are in our home, kind of modeling for them, what's it going to look like someday when you're not in our home anymore? And I think the way that we're interacting with extended families is how we are showing them sort of a snippet of what our future relationship might look like. And so, yeah, thinking about the holidays, just off the top of my head, I can go through the list of movies that I've seen, and it's that typical fiasco that everyone feels obligated to get together with their extended family at the holidays. And it's miserable, or there's a big secret that they've been keeping, or whatever the case might be. So we just really try to be in community with our family because, we want to show them that this is important to us. Like our family of six certainly is very important, but we need the village, right? We need those other people that care about us and have been pouring into us. So I don't know. I mean, I think if someone hasn't been in somewhat regular community, then it can be a little tricky at the holidays, and it can be easy to expect that one meal together to maybe deliver more than it's able to. So, in some ways, I think my advice would be try to reach out before the dinner, before the passing of presents or whatever you're doing, and just sort of work on maintaining or building that relationship a little bit so that it's not kind of a one and done, but hopefully building on something that's already happening pretty regularly.
I agree with that. I don't like small talk in
Hmm.
general. And so I enjoy a nice, juicy, established relationship. And so it always feels so inauthentic and off when you're making small talk with people in your own family because they don't actually know you. And I do agree. Like if these are people that are important enough to come into your home for the holidays, it needs to be more. It needs to not just be on these certain markers on the calendar. You need to get to know each other and nurture the relationships, so it's not just small talk at the holiday table.
Yeah. And I know for a lot of people, it's hard when distance gets thrown in there. We're about 3 hours from my parents, so we're a lot closer than some. But of course, if it requires a plane ticket or something like that, then it does make it more challenging. And I'm so grateful for technology in those situations that I do think just, one thing that our family has is a family group text and just ways, over the weekend, everybody just posted pictures. My family, we went hiking and posting pictures about that. And my sister's kids had soccer games, and then somebody else went camping, and just seeing, even if it's not a long conversation, oh, this is what you guys have been up to. I can show these pictures to my kids now, and then they feel somewhat connected to their cousins, or they know what they're into right now. That it helps sort of, I think, bridge that gap that sometimes distance can create.
I agree. And also with technology, sometimes you end up paying attention to strangers online and following their lives and their stories more so than your own immediate family. And so it is shifting back to, as you write, of deciding on purpose what your priorities are and then modeling that behavior for your children. If you're keeping up with the Kardashians, then you should absolutely be also keeping up with your family.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah. Well, Charity, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your book. Where can we learn more? And so, your book, we will link to everything, is called The Working Homemaker. And right now, if people wanted to find you, where should they go?
Yeah. So I am kind of new online. Along with this book, I've got a new website, and that is just charitygibson.com. And so there's more information about me and about the book. There's a link to Amazon. You could also just go directly to Amazon. And if you just type in The Working Homemaker, the subtitle is Employed Christian Moms Desiring a Thriving Home Life, then yeah, people should be able to find me that way.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Slow Down Society, for being here. I think you're amazing and wonderful. And I will be back in your earbuds next week. Do you have a slow living story to share? Leave me a voicemail at stephanieoday.com/podcast with any questions, comments, feedback, or testimonials, and I will be sure to include it in an upcoming episode. Also, if you found value in this episode, please share it with your family and friends and subscribe through your favorite podcast provider. The more you share, comment, and leave positive reviews, the more people we can reach and share the slow living lifestyle and messaging. Thank you, Slow Down Society, and have an absolutely wonderful day.